Hello, everybody, and welcome to Getting APIs to Work. Today, we say hello to Matthias Biel of Software AG and APIUniversity.com. Hey, Matthias, how are you doing?
Hi, Eric. Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. And thanks so much for joining. So today, we want to talk about API products and, in particular, 3 challenges when designing API products. There's a lot of talk around API products these days, so let's jump in by just talking about what is an API product. So Matthias, please give us your opinion. What is an API product?
Well, I think there's lots of opinions out there what an API product could be.
Yes.
I think most people have in their head when they talk about API products something like a Stripe or a Twilio, like a company that only has APIs as their only product and there's nothing else. But in reality, I mean, there's lots of companies out there that have other cool products that we all like and buy, and they need APIs as well. So they can also profit from this methodology of building APIs like a product, right? Having a product mindset when building APIs. And I think this also is very important when you talk about challenges, because the base challenge that we need to look at is that people look at APIs as a technical product or as a technical thing that they want to build. Right? They have a one-dimensional perspective of APIs. But in reality, when you look at APIs as a product, you have to consider a lot of different perspectives and dimensions to that thing that you're building. Technical, yes, of course, it is a technical thing that you're building, but you also need to look at the business, you need to look at the organization. So even if you're building internal APIs, so as opposed to external APIs like Stripe and Twilio, you can profit from doing something like product management for your APIs.
Yeah, I think the most important aspect is really what you started with, really to be a little bit wider in your definition of a product than just saying, okay, if it's directly monetized and it's only that API like Stripe and Twilio, right? Only then it's a product. So yes, being a little bit more inclusive in terms of which APIs you treat as a product. I think that's the most important takeaway there. Now, you recently published a blog post about challenges when it comes to designing API products, and you work a lot with organizations that are embarking on the API journey. So I thought it was really interesting to read about those challenges. Let's jump in and let's start with the first challenge that you identified, which is kind of a little bit of a confusion between your API customers, so to speak, and your organization customers, right?
That's right. Most companies already have customers, right? They have products that they produce for the customers, right? If you're a car manufacturer, you produce cars. If you're an insurance, you have the people who buy your insurance policy. If you're a bank, you have the people who have bank accounts. These are your customers. So when you talk to people from these specific industries about customers, they have this picture in their mind. Now, is this same person that has the bank account, that buys the car and so forth, is this also the API customer? Well, typically not. It could be in some cases, but typically this is not the API customer. The API customer is the person who is calling the API consumer, which is typically a new type of customer segment for a lot of companies that already have products, right, that are not API only companies.
I recently because I think it's such a nice example, I had a discussion with Bosch, and Bosch is selling heating systems. And now they have an API which actually is intended to go to the installation folks, right? So that the installation folks can better monitor the heating system and figure out, okay, something's wrong, we should come over and fix it. And then in that case, I think it's such a nice example where you say, of course, the customers of Bosch are the people who buy the heating systems. But in order to make them more happy, right, the API that actually is for the installation folks will help the end customers to get a better product in the end. And I think there are a lot of these scenarios where you really have to know very well what you're doing and then come up with good ideas of how you can improve your product and your customer experience. And sometimes it can be really indirect, like you said. Do you have a similar example from your experience?
Sure. And the important thing is really to have this distinction of who is it actually that you build your API for. Are you building it for the people who are installing the heating system, or are you building it for the people who are freezing at home and want to have it hot? Because those people who are freezing at home and want to have it warm, they don't care if there is an API in there, right? They couldn't care less. They just want to have it warm. Who cares if there is an API is actually the person who is installing it. So they can do things like predictive maintenance and look at the status and is it installed in the right way, or are there leaks in the heating system, stuff like that. So I think having this distinction is very important.
I will make it my mission now in every video that I do to mention the Spice Girls question, which is tell me what you want, tell me what you really, really want. And if we apply this to the heating systems, right, we could say, well, like your customers want, like you say, they want to have a warm house. That's what they really, really want. And then the question is, how do I get to the point where they have a warm house, right? And by fixing, for example, by doing predictive maintenance, you help achieving that goal. And I think like taking that step back always is very valuable and can get you into this point where you understand, okay, I have my main business is still heating systems, but I also can do a better job at keeping my customers' house warm. Okay. So let's move on to the second challenge that you identified, which is yours was overfitting. And that's something that I've also seen a lot. And please tell us a little bit about what you mean by overfitting and the problems that you create when you do that.
Right. We want to build customer-centric APIs, customer-centric API products. And what that means is we need to listen to our customers. We need to listen to their needs, to their pains, to the circumstances, to the tasks that they have to do, right? And we take all of this information in, and typically we should not only talk to one customer, we should talk to a group of customers or potential customers. And what you will realize then is sometimes their needs and pains are all over the place. And it takes a lot of focus to figure out what is the commonality of this group, or how can you cut this cloud of needs that you have in such a way that you have a really interesting and nice set of people that can be your customers. So you have to have a sizable number of customers in order to build good products. And the challenge is that sometimes some customers scream really loud. They say, hey,
Yes.
I want to have this and that feature. And
Yes.
you tend to listen to those more than maybe to those that are a little bit more quiet. And that can lead you down the wrong path. That can lead you down to not building products, but instead building a custom solution for that one customer. And that's what I then call overfitting. You just build something that's really good and fits really well, but only to a very limited set of customers, sometimes even just one. And that's not a product anymore. So a product should apply to this wide range of customers, right? So watch out to not do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of making people more aware of the fact that what a product really is defined as something that is useful to more than one consumer, right? Otherwise, it's not a product. I call these things solutions. I think you call them solutions as well, right? If it's
Yes.
their own.
So this one-to-one thing that you
Yeah.
just built for one customer, that's a solution, I would say.
Yeah. There's another dirty word for that in my mind, which is integration. It's another word where I treat it with a lot of kind of like I try to keep my distance. But yeah, products are for markets. And I think that's really the big takeaway here, that you should always think about what is the market like, and not just what is that one customer that I have in front of me right now, who are, as you said, sometimes very loud, but still it's not the best way to or it shouldn't be the only way how you think about your product, I guess.
And maybe we can give also to your listeners one technique for working out who those customers are. And what I find really
Sure.
valuable is this value proposition canvas, where you
Mm-hmm.
create customer profiles. I mean, we in the API economy or in the API business, we're really good at designing our APIs. With open API specifications, but we should take the same rigor that we put into designing our APIs and the open API specification into figuring out who the customers are and creating a customer profile for all these different types of customers that we talk to. And this customer profile or value proposition canvas by Alex Osterwalder is a really good way to structure your thinking, group your team around it, discuss what type of customers you have so that you can then build an API product for them.
Yeah, that's a really good pointer. And I think that's too much for today, but I would love to talk about this in more depth with you, because I think having these techniques, not just thinking, oh yeah, I probably should address a market, but also having like techniques for how do I do it, and having a tool that helps me doing that. I think that is what really then allows you to scale your API practice much better, by not just telling people you should target a market, but also helping them how to do that. So let's talk about this another time. I think that's a really good topic. Okay, now let's move on to your third challenge that you were mentioning in your article, which was listening too literally to your API customers, I would think, or API consumers. What do you mean by this too literally part?
Yes. So when we are in this mindset of building API products, we want to be customer centric. So we listen a lot to what the customers are saying. And the customers sometimes do not talk so much about their challenges and their needs. They talk about what solutions they propose, right? So there is this quote, I think it's attributed to Henry Ford, who says, if I would have asked people what they want,
Yeah.
they would have said faster horses, right? So people like to talk about those faster horses, about their solution for the problem that they have, getting fast from A to B. But maybe you, as the API provider, you know better how to solve that issue, and also how to solve it to a wide audience, to a wide set of customers, and not only for that particular one, right? So listen to the needs, and those are sometimes covered underneath. You have to uncover it. You have to listen, not to the words they're saying, but listen to what the problem is they are experiencing. And then you do your own thinking. You talk to other customers, and you kind of assemble your own view of what the real challenge is, and then you build your solution for this challenge. And this is actually a much better way of working together. And then the customers can be surprised, and they can say, wow, this is exactly what I wanted, but it's not what you said.
Yeah. And this is the first video where I can go with a Spice Girls question 2 times, right? So tell me what you really, really want, right? But that's exactly the point, right? The quote that you were giving, I think it's a wonderful example, because people in the end, and you said it yourself, right? They want to get from A to B faster. And if that means they're getting something different than a fast horse, that's fine too, as long as they get from A to B faster. And I think that's also the challenge really in API design then, is because it's much less this technical exercise of, well, do I use put or post or whatever? And it becomes much more like a product design challenge, right? Like thinking about your customers, their problems, trying to understand them, trying to understand, how do we fit into this? Is this really where we want to go? How can we help them best? And I think then you start playing a very different role than you do in a more technical oriented way of looking at APIs. Have you seen that this sometimes challenges teams too much, so to speak, to step back and move past, let's say, this purely technical perspective, and then they feel maybe a little bit overwhelmed or out of place?
Sure. I've seen this multiple times because when you think about where do we usually come from when we build APIs, maybe we come from a heritage of computer science or architecture. So we have this very technical view of the world, and we deal with technical systems on the other side. So we just have to remind ourselves, and I think every one of us is human, so we just need to remind ourselves, hey, there is someone on the other side of the computer who's using this API, and that's a person, right? It's not a computer. So I think yes, there is this challenge, but I don't think it's a big challenge that we cannot overcome. I think this is just something very natural and very human to just think about what would someone else in my position do when they see this API for the first time. And if you have this type of thinking, then putting yourself into the shoes of your potential API consumer, then you're on a really good path. Just be aware of these challenges that we have talked about today, so that you don't overdo it with stepping into the shoes of the other. But yeah, being aware of these challenges and doing this thinking from the customer's perspective is good.
Yes, I think it will help a lot, and thanks a lot for walking us through those 3 challenges. And like you said, I think a lot of people are coming to this space from a more technical background, and it's both a bit of a challenge, but it also, I think, can be very rewarding to really try to think about, like, what am I doing here and why am I doing this? And it can really help us to do a better job. Thanks, Matthias, for taking the time. I think that was really interesting. We will link to all your resources and to some of the stuff at API University from this video. So if you're interested in more information, check it out. And with that, we're done for today. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. And until next time, keep getting APIs to work. Bye, everybody.